Spiders, reptiles, jellyfish. When it comes to venom, there's no place as venomous as Australia. If you looked at a list of the top 10 most venomous snakes in the world, you'd find every single one of them is in Australia. And we have some of the most deadly spiders, not to mention our marine life. And as a result, Australia is one of the world leaders in venom and anti-venom research. That research has helped save many lives. But we're going to find out about new work that is threatening to turn upside down what we believe about some of the most common anti-venoms.
People want to believe there's these nasty creatures that bite us. We have this wonderful anti-venom that works. What we have to do is re-evaluate the evidence for anti-venom.
But first, we're going to find out what happens when you get bitten by one of Australia's venomous creatures. And of all of them, there are two of note. One the most deadly, and the other is responsible for the most bites.
Technically, the most dangerous spider in the world is the funnel web spider. The other spider that's important, though, is the redback spider, which is a widow spider. It's part of the same genus that's found just about everywhere in the world. Globally, widow spiders are the most common and important cause of spider bite.
Because redbacks live among us, even in urban environments, as many as 4,000 Australians are bitten by them every year.
For most people, it's a pain. It is literally a pain. The toxin from the redback spider, the key toxin that affects our body, is a nerve toxin called laterotoxin. And this toxin is pretty large compared to many venoms from snakes or other creatures, a very large collection of amino acids that forms a complex protein.
This neurotoxin has at least two known ways of interacting with the body. It acts on the nerve receptors, stimulating the production of neurotransmitters, leading to pain. And it acts upon the cell membranes, creating pores in them, allowing free calcium to flood into the cell.
This calcium seems to trigger the release of a lot of nerve transmitters. So that causes the pain, the sweating, the problems that we associate classically with the redback spider and the widow spiders.
Redback bites may be painful, but fortunately, there hasn't been a recorded death from them since 1956. The same can't be said for our next venomous creature, the eastern brown snake, a snake that's responsible for more deaths than any other snake in Australia. To find out what happens inside the body when an eastern brown snake injects its venom, I caught up with toxicologist Jeff ISBISTER. But first, we need to milk some venom.
Not looking forward to this.
Something I must say I'm a little nervous about.
All right, Graham. I'm gonna hand you that.
Yeah, you're scared, Graham. Oh, nothing to worry about.
I'm not a big fan of snakes.
Righto. You hold the tail, Graham. Got that bit? Got it?
And not without good reason. The eastern brown is notoriously aggressive, and this one is no exception.
I'm just stimulating the venom glands just a little bit.
Because its venom is super powerful, it only needs to inject a tiny amount of it into its prey. So to milk it requires just a tiny vial.
There we go. Ah, there's our bite. See that? That's what we're after.
Now, how are we going to put the snake down? That's what I want to know.
Well, actually, traditionally, I just let go of the head now and walk away.
Yeah, right, that's ideal with the doing.
Is that OK with you?
No.
Now to take some blood. My blood.
What we're going to do now is add some brown snake venom to that blood I've just collected from you.
Good thing it's happening in the test tube and not me.
Yeah, that's right. A couple of drops of venom.
Oh, so it's not that much.
Okay, we shake that about a bit.
The reaction of my blood to the venom is almost instantaneous.
Oh, geez, turned to jelly.
There's a jelly. On this side, you can see that there's no clot there at all.
Oh, yeah, gee, that's quite dramatic.
In human blood, there are 13 different molecules that regulate clotting, and one of the most affected by venom is fibrinogen. When the venom enters the blood, toxins activate the clot formation process, and fibrinogen among other clotting factors, is exhausted in the process. In the test tube, this makes a solid clot.
But in the body, you don't actually get a clot formed. What you actually get is the body trying to form a clot, and it just keeps consuming the factors in the process.
That leaves the blood depleted of clotting factors, and the victim can suffer uncontrollable bleeding both inside and outside the body. Because of this effect, the venom is known as a procoagulant.
The brown snake venom contains some of the most potent procoagulants for any snake in the world.
Really? So stand well back when you see a brown snake.
That's right. You really don't want to be bitten by a brown snake.
So you get bitten by a snake, you end up here.
Yeah, you come to our emergency department.
Emergency physician Bill NIMO has specialised in treating snake and spider bites for more than 14 years.
What we're going to do now is we're going to see whether you've got any venom in the circulation. Snake venom, most of the time, gets deposited under the skin in what we call the subcutaneous tissues. That gets absorbed by what we call the lymphatic system. So heart pumps blood out through the arteries, and then basically the blood comes back via the veins. Can you please take some blood? The first thing that you'd look at is for any coagulation-related problems, and we'd send that blood off looking for any coagulation problems. In that situation, say if the blood's come back and the patient was what we call coagulopathic, or they had other signs and symptoms, nausea, vomiting, headache, or unwell, I would treat them with antivenom.
Antivenom is regarded by many as a kind of magic bullet. And making it is a process that begins here at the Australian Reptile Park.
So how many venomous snakes have you got here?
250 of Australia's most venomous.
Fantastic. And you milk those?
We do. We keep all the major family groups, brown snakes, black snakes, death adders, tiger snakes, taipans, and we milk them fortnightly. We're in fact the sole supplier of raw venom for the production of anti-venom in Australia.
Fantastic. And I get to meet one of your friends?
You do? This one here is who we're going to have a look at today. No, not at all. I think both are aggressive.
Tim and his team are expert handlers of highly venomous snakes.
If they need to bite, they will. It's real simple.
Good to know.
Each snake is milked once a fortnight.
Whack. Look at that.
Oh, there's a lot of venom.
After collection, the venom is frozen, then dried, then sent off to Australia's only anti-venom manufacturer, the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories.
Be very careful of a bite, even after they've been milked.
Right, they've still got venom.
Oh, yeah, sure. They only give us about half each milking, so there's half left. All right. 249 to go.
Here at CSL, anti-venom is still produced in much the same way as it was when first invented more than 100 years ago. Tiny amounts of the venom are injected into an animal host, in most cases a horse. Now, not enough to hurt them, but just enough to stimulate the horse's natural immune system. So, the animal begins to produce antibodies to fight the venom. After some time, these antibodies are extracted, purified, and used to save human lives.
Is anti-venom a risk-free treatment?
Antivenom's made in horses or sometimes other animals like sheep, and so you're giving foreign proteins to humans, and the risk there is you're going to get an allergic reaction like anaphylaxis. Australian antivenoms are probably some of the best in the world and have the lowest rates of reactions. Snakes, we would probably see 3% of patients, so 3 in 100 would have severe anaphylaxis, so that's life-threatening allergic reaction.
But is antivenom really as effective as we think? Dr. Jeff ISBISTER's recent research has cast some doubt on how beneficial some antivenoms are.
When did you first get an inkling that the antivenom for redback bites may not work?
The big difference about redback antivenom, it was always given into the muscle, so an intramuscular injection. And then 10 years ago, we queried, should we give it into the veins? Because that's how we give snake antivenom, all the other ones. So give it much more rapidly. We did a study where we compared intravenous to intramuscular injection of antivenom, and we found no difference. So what that suggested was that the antivenom was equally ineffective by both routes of administration.
To test his hypothesis, Geoff conducted a randomised controlled trial of 224 redback spider bite patients. Half were treated with just salt water, while the other half were given redback anti-venom, and all the patients had standard painkillers. The results were surprising.
We showed there was no difference between no anti-venom and anti-venom in terms of treating the pain and also the systemic effects, so the nausea, vomiting and headache.
Geoff's research seemed to indicate that redback anti-venom was totally ineffective. And the story doesn't stop there. Geoff's next study raised questions about the efficacy of brown snake anti-venom.
We did some modelling studies, so just some mathematical theoretical studies where we developed a complex model of the human coagulation pathway. We then asked that model a couple of questions. And one of them was, once the process starts, when do we have to give antivenom? And we showed in the model, if we don't give antivenom within 10 to 15 minutes, we can't prevent this process even occurring, and we couldn't seem to speed up the recovery at all in the model. As I'm a researcher and a clinician, the clinician in me said, that's a load of rubbish. You know, antivenom works. I give it to patients all the time. But at that time, we had some data that we could explore that in real patients.
Using that data, Geoff investigated whether giving antivenom earlier made a difference to a patient's recovery.
Our hypothesis was if you gave antivenom earlier, you would assume the patient would recover earlier. And we showed it made no difference at all. If you gave antivenom earlier than 6 hours versus later than 6 hours, the recovery time was exactly the same.
As a result of his own research, Geoff no longer prescribes redback antivenom for his patients. And he believes that more research into brown snake antivenom is needed. But Geoff's work is considered highly controversial among his colleagues in toxicology.
So what problems do you have with this research?
I believe the study is significantly flawed and it does not fit with clinical experience over more than 5 decades in Australia. In my view, it's bad medicine to change a long-standing treatment on the basis of one unreplicated study. The basis of science is the ability to replicate a finding, independently replicate a finding.
I think it's important early work, but it's not the conclusion to the discussion, I think. We should revisit what we think about this envenomation syndrome and its treatment, but because we had 60 years of practice-based evidence using the antivenom, which is pretty safe, then I think we should just critically evaluate the strengths and limitations of that kind of study before we throw the antivenom out, because we'll never get an antivenom like that back again.
Whether or not the redback and brown snake antivenoms are effective is clearly a divisive issue, and one that requires careful consideration and more research in the future. In the meantime, if you'd like some more information on how to prevent and treat a snake or spider bite, visit the Catalyst website for some web-exclusive content.